Well, it's well, this is you're in there. Whenever I have authors who are published and have been on a couple of tours, we're in the presence of royalty, I guess, in literary terms. Scott Shuttleman Phillips joining us. We talked for folks who don't know. Remove Before Flight is the book. Yep. It's about and it's a little different because you got pictures and a lot of stories about doing things. We hear about the engineers and we hear about the grand plan, but we don't hear about the technicians that make things work. And the whole idea of Remove Before Flight was you pull that right before you leave the shuttle tank, right?
That's exactly right. And of course, my claim to fame is the fact that I was the last technician to drop out of the external tank for STS-1 back in 1981. We had to do some level sensor testing, and I was part of a test team. And I was 22 years old at the time, and before Bob Crim and John Young launched, I removed the final ribbon off the external tank, which made me the final guy out. And so I kept that ribbon. I have that ribbon today. So my book was named Remove Before Flight because I was the last guy to leave the tank.
So you've been going around. You've had opportunities here to go to the other NASA centers.
Oh yeah.
You've gone to places that normally don't probably even understand that we have a space program.
That's right.
You've kind of been on your tour. You've been to kind of give us a sense of where you've been and what touched you.
Well, I'm actually just blown away, absolutely. In fact, that we've kind of barnstormed the Midwest. We've been, of course, in Tennessee. We've been in Kentucky. We've been in West Virginia. We've been in Ohio. We've been in Michigan. We got back from just recently got back from the Goddard Space Flight Center, where I actually did the engineering colloquium this year. And then I was made the Woodcarver of the Year in the state of Ohio. And so we had what we call the Artistry and Wood Show, which is a well-known show in Ohio and the largest. And I was the featured carver. And so my family got to go, and it was a just terrific time.
So you've gone from, because you look at the woods that you use in these shuttle replicas, you've presented to astronauts and different crews and different people along the way. People don't realize, how did you get from being in the space program to doing woodworking? Because this is awesome, and you keep doing amazing things.
Well,
here.
I appreciate it. In fact, to date, I've done over 450 of these space shuttle models, and a lion's share of them, of course, during the program. And I started out as a kid, and when I was 10 years old, and even before then, I loved to carve my mother's broomsticks. And my mom would always get consternated with me because she'd have to bend over to sweep. But she recognized her son, wanting to do something. But I discovered the trees outside weren't, sufficient to carve on because they were wet and all that. And so I learned the study of dendrology. And that's an interesting science that told me there's 20,000 different species woods available in the world market.
20,000 different species of woods?
Species of woods available in the world.
How many of them have you carved
Well,
with?
And I haven't even really scratched the surface in a sense. A lot of the domestics, what we call, domestics that are local, especially here in North America, which are walnuts and cherries and oaks and things of that nature. But I got into things like exotic woods, which are woods that are, like in South America and the rainforest, that type of thing. And so there's just like musical notes to me, and I play guitar, but it's like musical notes. And I take each one of those hardnesses and colors. I don't paint or stain anything. Everything is exactly the way that it is, the way it grows. And so I blend these together. And so during the program, Eileen Collins, the first shuttle female commander, says, "Hey, we don't see any borders in outer space. So when we come to the ground and we see your models, it represents sort of a one orbit type thing for us because you take wood from Africa, South America, North America, blend them all together, and it's sort of like analogous to us on orbit." And so she deemed me an artist, not a woodchucker like Scotty thinks I am. But I had a hard time.
Affectionately,
but I have a hard time with calling myself an artist. I am a woodworker, and I've been trying to inspire my boys, and certainly want to inspire people along the way.
These are awesome.
Well,
and I guess you got a website, people can see the pictures.
Yeah,
right?
in fact, you go to www.removebeforeflightbook.com, and you'll see a lot of them. They're signed by the actual people that flew the most complex vehicle devised, and that's the space shuttle.
Which makes them even more valuable to people.
Right, absolutely, because a lot of these astronauts are retiring now.
Scott Shuttleman Phillips, we're going to talk a little bit more about his trip around the country. So you were barnstorming the Midwest. I want to get to some of the stories that and people you encountered. And anyway, I'm still in awe of our poster here. We got to find a good place for it. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate
You're very
that.
welcome. Of course.
Scott's with us for the hour. Stick around. Scott Shuttleman Phillips joining us, the author of Remove Before Flight. Your experience with NASA and beyond, because you talk a lot about, in fact, on your bookmark I use all the time, you talk about being inspired and inspiring people and be inspirational and have passion. You had that for what you did, and you carried it on over to the woodworking and writing this book.
Absolutely. In fact, that's really our purpose, even with the what's going on politically, and a lot of people are looking for the government to do the things that to do their daily life. And the reality is, it's within ourselves. And I learned it very young in my life to be inspired. And as we know, in '69. We did one of the greatest things that ever could happen was land man on the moon.
And now I hear we're going back. We're talking about going back.
And I actually understand that to be a good thing for this generation, because it is the inspiration that it comes from these hard things that we do. What's wrong with today is with the youth today, they have nothing to attach themselves to, nothing larger than themselves. They're inward looking. And that's very detrimental, because when you're inward looking, you can't please yourself. A million people can't please one man, and one man can't please a million people. So, but the inspiration is God-given, and it's within ourselves to be able to be inspired to attach ourselves to something larger. And I was fortunate to be able to get on the Space Shuttle program to focus my energies and my gifts and my talents and incorporate my love for wood on the side to be able to withstand my job.
It is one of those unusual marriages. You go from working on this program to now doing the replicas and doing this incredible woodwork.
Right.
I mean, that's unique. That's a story in itself.
Well, I did that during the program, all the way through the program, and I just continued on even after the program. And so I found a niche where these astronauts that saw my work, during the program, they wanted one post-flight and post-career. So I just did one for Brian Duffy, Commander Brian Duffy. He flew 4 missions, and he said, "Hey, Scott," he said, "I want to leave a legacy to my grandchildren." And so I built him one this past year, and of course he has it on his mantle right now. And they say, "Hey, Grandpa, who flew that?" He goes, "I did." And so that's really a legacy for him.
That's cool when you go, "Who flew that, Grandpa?" "I did."
That's right.
You did.
That's exactly right.
So you barnstormed the Midwest. You've been down to Florida,
Yep.
I think, on another trip. And
yep.
So what we hear about all the rhetoric. We got a divided country. We have all this political stuff going on.
Right.
You talked to Middle America.
Yep, I sure did.
What inspired you on that trip? Are there people that kind of shocked you as being? Were you shocked at how little people knew about the space program, or were you surprised that people knew a lot more and knew about what you were talking about?
Well, it varies, because the generation that grew up with the space shuttle certainly remembers. In fact, kind of the opening line that I talk about is the Challenger disaster. Usually people my age want to ask me about the Challenger disaster and where they were. They want to tell me where they were when that happened. And most of these guys say, "Hey, I was in the 5th grade when it happened. I was a senior in high school, or I was in college." But a lot of young people that are just now coming up in the 5th, 6th grade, they're really saying, "Hey, this is history for me. I don't remember the shuttle. I see it on YouTube and stuff like that, and I would love to attach myself to something like that." So I'm actually blown away that my story is a story of the working man, the story of a guy that you would have done if you had the opportunity that I did, that you would have done the same thing that I did. Is I actually had a good work ethic, and I did right by people, and I certainly did the right things. And so that gave me a 33-year career, 33-year career in the shuttle program. So I really want to inspire not only my boys, but the youth of today to attach themselves to something larger and be prepared. Do your schoolwork, do right by people and have a good work ethic. And then when that opportunity presents itself, then you can honestly seize that moment. But if you have a passion, like I did with the wood carving, doesn't matter, singing, dancing, whatever, then you can incorporate that, to make your career interesting and make yourself a standout a little bit. And then as you go on through life, like we did with the Challenger disaster, you go through the tough times. And I went through the tough times and came out a better person 3 years later.
That's it. There are going to be bumps in the road.
Absolutely.
And you got to be prepared
for this generation is fearful of failure. They think that when they fail at something early on in their life that they can't do it. And so they don't develop their passion, and they don't go through the tough times. And so they don't grow. And so I want to tell this next generation, I've been telling this next generation, is go through those tough times. It will season you as a person, and then you'll grow and use it as a learning tool or learning experience.
I dare say that because you just said it, you made yourself unique in your job.
Right.
I dare say that you would not have met the people you met along the way, the astronauts and crew members and a lot of other people. You wouldn't have gotten that attention without the passion for the carving, because you would have just been another one of the guys.
That's right. And I was a standout in the sense that I even dressed, even when I was in the protocols, I wore red, white, and blue. And even 30 years ago, I even had that premonition to actually dress properly, so I fit in the picture. So today, even in my book, when you see the photographs, I actually fit in with the astronauts because they had blue suits on and everything. So you have to plan your life to a certain degree with a little head
Man
knowledge.
with a plan. There you go.
Yep.
Have a plan. Scott Shuttleman Phillips is with us for the hour. We'll talk a little bit more about the book if you have not heard it. It's doing pretty well. We'll talk about that as well. He's with us for the hour. Stick around on the Fred Holland Morning Show.
Ten, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
Okay, we got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
David says to say hello to you, by the way. Lunch with him yesterday.
Wow. Well, we're talking space. Hoping we get a chance to get back there. Scott Shuttleman Phillips, author of Removed Before Flight, discusses his journey promoting his book, Inspiring Young People to Be Greater Than Themselves. You were, we'll get back to some of the other stuff having to do with the trip, but you were telling me during the break, you've got a nephew in Michigan who runs a service station?
Yeah, I have, in fact, on Diane's side, we have some people that, they do those types of work, service stations, things of that nature. And, they're like, it's just a regular job. And I said, well, but the thing is you can actually bring something to that. Here again, you can actually, take a picture of the guy that, gets the 100th tank of gas and post his picture and give him a candy bar and make a big deal about it. Become that person that everybody wants to come to. My personality type is, I don't know if people know what Myers-Briggs is, but my personality is an INFJ. And an INFJ is an intuitive person that understands, go the extra mile, do right by people, and they'll come back to you. So if you're in a business that you're sweeping floors or cleaning houses or whatever, be known as the best. And, your repeat business will come in and you'll feel better about yourself.
So I find that inspiring. He said, it's just a service station. And you go, no, this is an opportunity to connect with people.
That's right. It is about people. In fact, I miss more about the space shuttle program, not the hardware, as much as I do the people. The hardware was cold and unforgiving and hard and fast and unforgiving, but people were the things that made it happen. It was Sally, Sue, Bob, and Jim that made that baby launch. And so it was about people. Invest in people. That's what I'm telling young people.
So you're out talking to, let's talk about young people for a minute. Because you talk to them, they find out a little bit about you. Maybe their parents bring them to a book signing.
Yep.
What are they going away with? Or do you feel like you're getting through
well,
some
first
of
of
these
all,
kids
the
that are
art,
going,
the
I
art,
didn't know that?
Well, the artwork is actually what inspires young people. In fact, I had a guy come over to me, and he wasn't exactly young, but he was younger than me, and he comes over and he says, "Hey, did you make that?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "I spent 33 years in Space Shuttle." And he said, "I'm 33. So it was the continuity of the artwork that actually inspired him to come over to talk to an old guy like me. So I think the artwork is the opening door, and then once they get into the idea of attaching themselves to something larger than themselves, then they're inspired. So I'm inspirational. I think my story is inspirational because it's a working man's story that tells, hey, you got a certain education level, you have an opportunity in hand, what are you going to do with it? You got a little passion that you can develop along the way, and so I developed my passion. I got laughed at a lot of times. People didn't support me. In fact, a lot of people put roadblocks in front of me, but I knew my passion. I was doing the right thing, and I was doing it, for my legacy, and it is ultimately about our legacy. In fact, Fred, your radio station is your legacy. And that's how you want to be remembered. That's our immortality, is our legacy. So our passion has been given to us to develop, not to put on the shelf.
Do you feel like sometimes, and I don't know if you bear this as a responsibility, not necessarily a burden, but you're that voice for all those other people who weren't the engineers and the creators and all of that.
That's right.
You guys were the grunts.
Well, that's right.
Do you feel like you're the spokesman for those guys?
Absolutely. And there was more of us than them, in the sense that it took over 20,000 people to maintain that shuttle system. And, of course, we actually put our hands on the hardware, and we actually took the risks. Of course, the astronauts took the ultimate risk. But the inspiration comes from, the people that actually turned the wrenches and did that on a daily basis for 30 years on the shuttle program, and I was one of those guys. We belonged to the world's greatest workforce, and I take that to my grave and give that to my sons as a legacy, and hopefully people will want to attach themselves to that.
And probably people don't know, but the astronauts knew that you guys were the ones that got them there and got them back safely.
Well, it was up to them. In fact, they had a program called the Manned Spaceflight Awareness Award, and von Braun started that. In other words, people were conscious that there were people on board these human spaceflight vehicles, so they needed to keep us motivated. So they did that by doing things like the Silver Snoopy Award, and setting dinners up, and then have launch honorees, which I did become. In fact, when hello Diane, by the way, I love my wife, and she and I got married in '94, and we're launch honorees on STS-62 for our honeymoon. So that motivated me to do the right thing by people. So the manned spaceflight program was set in motion from Wernher von Braun days when we landed man on the moon to motivate guys like us to give our lives. I gave 33 years of my life dedicated every day, getting up every morning at 6 o'clock every morning, like you do, Fred. And, it takes that hard work to do that.
Yeah, mine's a 5-minute drive.
Well, I had to go down Martin Road.
Scotty does all the hard work.
Yeah, there you go. But it's all worth it towards the end. As we get older, then our legacy starts to come in view. Then that's really when, we can let go of this life and pass on to the next generation, boost up, building off the shoulders of giants. That's our purpose in life, is letting the next generation build off of our mistakes, and so they don't make the same mistakes that we did. So if we're going to go to Mars in the future, back to the moon, it's going to be guys like me that laid that groundwork like they did when we landed the moon on the first time. I was inspired by those people, and we learned, through those guys.
When you hear those test stands, do you kind of get a yearning?
Yeah, in fact, the SLS core vehicle that was built at Michoud is similar to what I worked on, 35 years ago with the external tank, and that's longer and the same diameter. But they're going to start doing what they call the structural test on that, hopefully beginning of next year. So I want to be part of that, just to go out to view it.
I remember hearing somebody. I remember the first time I moved here, I heard that.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, "What is that?" And they said, "That's the future."
That's the future. That's exactly right. So hopefully this next generation will get an opportunity to attach themselves to that. That's a very worthy thing to either go back to the moon or even go on to Mars. Mars is a virgin territory. It is a Noah's Ark type mindset where if we start out a 5-generation settlement, that this generation will decide the language, the music, will decide the government, will decide the norms and the values. So they're in a way they're a Noah's Ark, and they can settle that planet. So I'm excited for the next generation, but they'll be building off the shoulders of giants that came before them. So I'm glad I was part of that and part of the greatest workforce in history in the 20th century.
Biggest surprise on this road trip through the Midwest?
Biggest surprise was, I would say that the biggest surprise is how the young people really want to attach themselves to something larger. They gravitate to me. In fact, I just love it because the young people just look up to me like I was an astronaut or something. But not everybody can be an astronaut. They can be part of something larger. And I keep emphasizing larger than yourself. And these cell phone things are great tools, but they're no way, going to help you out to do right by people and shake hands and look at people in the eye and do the right things. And when you have people's lives in your hands, like we did in human space flight, you have to be vigilant to make sure that you're doing the right thing every day.
So you were telling me you're over 5,000 now on Amazon?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Moving along with the book.
Yeah, in fact, if you go on the reviews on Amazon, they're all 5s. And people, I'm actually blown away. People I don't even know, I've never met, even people from other countries have come over here and read the book, and they're so inspired because we talk about the Hubble telescope, and we talk about, what I think the future will bring, in the next 20 years. Going back to the moon or to Mars. So it really is an inspirational read. My wife, Diane, of course, is responsible for, dotting the I's and crossing the T's and doing, that. But I actually had the stories that, told the journey that, you can do anything if you put your mind to it.
And Remove Before Flight, that ribbon is a real. We have one hanging in the office there. Those things are so cool because I look at that and I go,
Well, I've given out thousands of them. I got a printer here in town that just prints them up by the thousands, and so I have them always in the car and wherever I go. In fact, yesterday we were eating at Phil Sandoval's, and there was a guy sat next to me. It had one on his a NASA jacket, so I actually had to give him a business card because I told him, hey, I said, Remove Before Flight. I said, that's my book. So he and I talked, and so it was great.
You met some interesting people along the way we haven't even touched on yet. More with Scott Shuttleman Phillips just ahead. Scott Shuttleman Phillips, the author of Remove Before Flight and a woodchuck. Scotty's called you a woodchuck.
That's
now.
okay. I take it from him. it from him.
You actually are, because that was you got the Ohio wood.
Yeah, in fact, the Artistry and Wood Show is the largest Midwest show of its kind, and it features carvers from around not only the state of Ohio but from around the world. And so I was blessed to be notified that I actually was the featured carver this year to that show, in which about 4,000 to 5,000 people attend.
And these are people who do other things. Yours is unique.
Yeah.
They do cigar Indians or cigar store Indians or animal carvings and all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. A shuttle is quite unique.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't know my standard setup is 3 tables wherever I go for the book. And so I got there and they had 6 tables. So I was able to fill it up, and it's on my website, the actual setup. But Scott and Susie Phillips from PBS, from the American Wood Shop, of course, came over and introduced themselves and interviewed us. So, hey, it's a possibility that the art will propagate more in the future.
This shuttle you brought, you always bring one for us to gaze in awe at. And Tom Rigsby, who hosts the Talk Radio for Entrepreneurs program, was looking at this thing and was you said this is you've done 400.
Yeah,
of these
450.
So far. 450.
Oh, yeah, 450.
Now, how many woods are in this one?
Well, this one's 20. I started out early in the, of course, in the 80s. I started out with 2 or 3 woods, and then years later I would add another detail, and it would be 5 or 6 woods and other details. So this was an evolutionary process. So the early ones you see, of course, they're all serial numbered, but the early ones you saw would only have just 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 woods. Now I'm up to 20 woods now because I have it's highly detailed.
The boosters are the for this one are the attraction because of all the different. How many woods are just in those?
Yeah,
boosters?
There's 11. There's 11. Yeah, there's 11 woods in each of those boosters.
These are awesome. These are all natural colors.
All natural colors. Just a clear coat that goes over it and stuff. But by the way, I'd like to say hello to my mom out there too because she's listening this morning. She told me she would listen. So, Mom, I appreciate you listening. And you started it, with me carving your broomstick, so I appreciate that.
That was irritating too, right? She had to stoop over.
She had to stoop over. And she goes, "Do you have to cut the broomsticks?" I go, "I don't know, but they're hardwood.
They're gonna have something to carve."
So, yeah, that's something to carve. And she supported me by buying more brooms, so I used the sticks.
There you go. The rest is history.
Absolutely.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. America's first space shuttle. Go! Oh, honey, go. Fly like an eagle. Go.
A lot of people, a lot of stuff, a lot of heart went into those launches. I guess you get a little a little twinge when you hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the thing is YouTube. In fact, I have a YouTube account myself, but you can watch any launch that you want from STS-1 to 135. And there's times I'll sit back with a ham sandwich in my hand, sit back, and I'll watch STS-1, knowing I was the last man. When I saw that tank drop off, I said, I was that last guy. I'm history. And a lot of people don't know this, but when you go to the theater and you see an Air Force commercial and you show the STS-1 launching and the jumping man, that the guy that jumps in that video, I'm that guy.
Wow.
I am. I'm the jumping man on the STS-1 video. And so the Air Force shows it. So when Diane and I were dating back in 94, that came on, and I had a hard time convincing her. I tapped her on the shoulder, and I said, "That's actually me." And she goes, "Is that right?" And it is. I am actually the jumping man. So not to draw, but the thing is I can go on YouTube and relive those days. And so that's a great technology.
Scott Shuttleman Phillips joining us, the author of Remove Before Flight, a book that kind of came out of that experience as a technician, the guy who pulled that tag, right? The
Remove Before Flight. It's the number one engineered item to be noticed by the engineers to remove an item that would be hazardous upon launch. So, of course, the military, of course, this town would know that, but any missile or any rocket would have that on it, and I removed the final one off the external tank prior to Bob Crimpin and John Young's flight. So I maintain that ribbon, and, of course, my book's analogous to the eye was removed before flight.
So there you go.
Yeah.
You got a chance to meet Trump.
I sure did.
Tell us about that.
Well, I had an opportunity. Of course, I know Jeff Sessions, and Jeff, of course, been on the Arsenal, and he recognized me. I was at an event, and, of course, Trump was at the same event. And so Trump came over. I had a ribbon in my pocket. I had 30 seconds with him. And so, of course, we were talking about the space program, and he and I are about the same height, so we were looking eye to eye. And I said, what's your stance on the space program? And he said, I know it's important to the area. He said, we'll do a good job. And, of course, that was, him as a candidate. What he'll do as president. What'll happen here in Huntsville, for Huntsville, is, of course, Jeff Sessions will be a part of the administration we just heard. But people don't realize that upon him being sworn in, that the existing, the person that's the NASA administrator today will be leaving. Charlie Bolden and his deputy, Newman, will be leaving, and Robert Lightfoot will become the administrator interim. So Huntsville.
You hope he's a keeper?
Well, he
had a nice tenure here.
Yeah, he was actually the marshal director. So I think that Robert is a great guy, and the fact that he recognizes Huntsville's importance. So I think it's the stars are lining up for a strong space program, certainly out of Huntsville, and for the nation, really for the next generation. So if it's going back to Mars, or if it's going back to the moon, or going on to Mars, here again, that'll be an opportunity for this next generation to attach themselves to something really like a Noah's Ark, because there are things that have to be overcome. Be a lot more technicians and engineers.
There's a whole bunch of out there on the road. You're going to keep going out on the road inspiring
kids.
Yeah, in fact,
right? we're already doing 17 right now for 27. We're home for the holidays, for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then we'll get back on the road in the spring. And so I've got a lot of things already ahead of us.
All right, real quickly, your website, where people find the book, all that stuff.
Everything you'll see is www.removebeforeflightbook.com. That's 3 W's. removebeforeflightbook.com.
All right, get the book. It's still out there, and it's inspiring a lot of people. And I'm excited about the youngsters.
Absolutely,
getting motivated.
That's what it's all about.
Scott, always great seeing you.
Well, I love you, Fred. I appreciate it.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You do the same.
Thanks, man.
Okay.